Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. Cabinet ministers must make public their 100-day report cards, says Prime Minister. And do women feel safe in Malaysia, or are they constantly in fear of being sexually harassed? That's coming up. More than 400,000 COVID-19 cases reported in the country this year were those under the age of 18, up from about 12,000 cases last year. According to Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin, out of the total number of cases, 67 deaths were reported.
He said infections involved 252,569 school children and 42,831 preschool students. As of yesterday, 43%, or some 1.35 million teenagers aged 12 to 17, have received at least one dose of the vaccine under the vaccination program for the group. Khairy reiterated the importance for this group to adhere to SOPs to avoid infection, as vaccination alone is not enough.
COVID-19 vaccination is mandatory for federal public officers. In a statement today, the Public Service Department said they must immediately complete their vaccination before November 1st. The rule applies to all federal government employees except for those who have health reasons. During the period, civil servants who have yet to receive their COVID-19 vaccine must walk into any government vaccination centre for the purpose. PSD said those who did not get the vaccine by the stipulated time without a valid exemption would be subjected to disciplinary action. Officers who cannot be given the vaccine due to health reasons have to submit the necessary health documents that have been verified by a government medical officer to their respective department head. PSD said this decision was taken to ensure the smooth running of public services and to restore confidence to the public. Members of the Cabinet have been ordered to reveal their respective ministries' 100 Days Malaysia Family Aspiration Achievement Report Card to the public. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said this would allow the public to assess the performance of the respective ministries and their ministers.
He said the government has placed the achievement of Keluarga Malaysia aspirations as the utmost priority for each minister in giving their best service to the people. According to him, the 100 days would begin on September 1st, the day they had their first meeting. On September 24th and 29th, he held sessions with all 31 cabinet ministers to finalize their list of proposed aspirations. The performance of each cabinet member will be evaluated based on three key elements: the ministry's performance evaluation, a leadership evaluation based on the effectiveness of the initiative, and a public perception evaluation of cabinet members and the ministries under the purview.
There is an even distribution of Bumiputra contractors across tiers. This is one of the key findings from a newly launched report by Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, or IDEAS, which reviews the success and failures of pro-Bumiputra policies within public procurement.
There have been recent initiatives in the past few years, especially to try and help Bumiputra small contractors to graduate by setting a time limit. So we wanted to follow up on that. We also engaged with the data to look at the distribution, where the contractors are located. And I think as expected, many in the smallest G1 category. There are, of course, many there, but we also found that there's potentially room to grow because there are relatively fewer at the G3 and G5 level.
G1 contracts, the smallest out of 7 grades with contract value of less than 200,000 ringgit, accounts for 63.3% of all Bumiputra contractors, compared to 34.5% for non-Bumiputra contractors. Dr. Lee explains why it is so.
There is still an old guard, right, that are comfortable, that's sort of been they're used to particular ways of G1, where they can go for balloting and eventually you get something, you get the contract that rolls around. There's also the problem of the abuses that was related to multiple ownerships, right, which is against the regulations.
Dr. Lee also highlights more issues regarding ownership and abuses that further hinders the development of Bumiputra companies.
We looked at the implementation and some of the problems there, which I think we were able to confirm in terms of the enforcement of some of the rules regarding ownership and the abuses that do take place, where we have proxy ownership and a lot of amassing of contracts, even though they're supposed to be, one person, one contract. And so I think the issues of enforcement and inadequacies in having a law and the enforcement agencies and mechanisms are also one of the things that we found out.
Therefore, ideas propose a point-based system that is reinforced with growth pathways to promote the development of Bumiputra construction companies. This could lead to better capacity building that can better benefit the industry as a whole.
Point system is a proposal in which at every level a new entrant will get a certain number of points, and it diminishes over time. Either that or it diminishes with each contract, and there's a flexibility in such a system. So again, it's about giving some incentive, but also that for different pathways, if someone chooses to be more of a generalist, we call it, you could say, or a specialist, there can be modifications, and the emphasis really needs to be on building capacity, on capability. There's been a lot of focus on equity and ownership. But what needs to drive it, right, is building capability and expansion, right? And of course, other things will follow as well. But what is primary is, again, capacity building.
We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
And ownership, but
Ayo, keluarga Malaysia.
What needs to drive
kita bulatkan
it,
tekad
right,
dan
is
bersatu hati.
Building.
Welcome back. More than 50% of women between the ages of 18 and 30 have directly experienced some form of sexual harassment. That's according to a survey done by Centre for Governance and Political Studies and All Women's Action Society. Do women feel safe in Malaysia, or are they constantly in fear of being sexually harassed? Awam's Janelle Tan is here to share with us her insights.
A survey of 1,056 women respondents aged 18 to 29 found that majority 71% of them had to change their travel routes or routines due to fear of being sexually harassed. More than half of them is sexually harassed verbally when walking on the streets, do not feel safe driving alone at night, and have experienced unwanted touching. While 44% of the women experienced a teacher making sexually provocative jokes, and 37% said they felt unsafe whilst being treated by a male doctor. Some of the women have also received unwanted touching or sexual provocations from family members.
Firstly, because sexual harassment violates a woman's body and dignity, it violates her basic right to life. And this basic right to life, under the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, it consists of safety and security. Secondly, sexual harassment violates the right to non-discrimination by concurrently violating other basic rights. So, for example, freedom of movement, education, employment, access to healthcare and social services. And we see that in the survey findings. So, for example, the finding about women needing to change travel routes because they fear of getting sexually harassed, right? So that's affecting freedom of movement.
Sexual harassment has always been prevalent among the society, said Janelle, but have recently been under the spotlight.
On one hand, you have the enhanced public awareness, and that's to a large extent because of advocacy work by various women's rights organizations, including AWANI, especially over the last few years. On the other hand, you also have the government's priority on passing the anti-sexual harassment bill to sort of gain public sentiments, have a more favorable image. So these two factors, I would say, lead to greater visibility of sexual harassment as an issue. Hence, that's why it seems that sexual harassment is occurring more often now, but actually it's not. It's just that it's been under the surface for the longest time, and it's now just being brought to light.
YouTube is cracking down on vaccine misinformation. The streaming platform announced a tougher policy towards anti-vaccine content and will also be able to remove comments that criticize approved vaccines. This is a turning point for YouTube, as it will no longer only target fake news about vaccines against COVID-19.
The company said videos that say approved vaccines are dangerous and cause autism, cancer, or infertility are among those that will be taken down. The policy includes the termination of accounts of anti-vaccine influencers. Tech giants have been criticized for not doing more to counter false health information on their sites. YouTube, which is owned by Google, said 130,000 videos were removed from its platform since last year when it implemented a ban on content spreading misinformation about COVID vaccines.
Melbourne's COVID-19 cases surged to record levels with 1,438 new infections on Thursday. Officials blame illegal home gatherings for the spike, even though a hard lockdown has been in place for nearly 2 months.
Authorities in Victoria estimated nearly a third of Thursday's new infections could be traced back to home parties last weekend to watch the Australian football grand final on television. Thursday's numbers were a 50% jump compared to Wednesday's 950 cases. Authorities described the situation as a major setback to stem a third wave of infections fueled by the Delta variant. Victoria is racing to vaccinate the state's 5.5 million adult population. Only half of the population above 16 have received their first dose.
A battle between gangs in a prison in Ecuador had killed at least 116 people and injured 80. Authorities are calling the incident the worst penitentiary massacre in Ecuador's history. President Guillermo Lasso indicated that the prison was not yet entirely secured. The government has also declared a 60-day state of emergency across Ecuador's prisons, allowing for military troops, among other powers, to be deployed to penitentiaries. The state also announced that $24 million will also be allocated to the prison system. Authorities attributed Tuesday's bloodshed at the penitentiary in the coastal city of Guayaquil to gangs linked to international drug cartels fighting for control of the lockup. Ecuador's prisons have been racked with bloodshed this year, with more than 140 violent deaths reported. The bloodiest day occurred in February, when 79 prisoners died in simultaneous riots in 3 prisons in the country. Israeli police fatally shot 2 Palestinians in 2 separate incidents today. The first was a Palestinian woman killed in the old city of Jerusalem, while the Palestinian boy was killed in the occupied West Bank village of Birkin.
According to Israeli forces, the woman allegedly tried to stab police in one of the streets heading to Al-Aqsa Mosque. She was identified as 30-year-old Isra Kuzaima, a mother of 3 from the village of Kabatia, south of Jenin. Meanwhile, the 22-year-old Ala Nasir Muhammad Zayud, shot dead by Israeli police, was claimed to have opened fire on them during clashes prompted by an overnight arrest operation. He was shot overnight in the nearby village of Burkin during an armed confrontation with the Israeli army after it raided the town with dozens of military jeeps and special forces at dawn to carry out arrests.
After being suspended for a year, the Malaysia My Second Home program will be reactivated tomorrow under stricter requirements. Tonight on Consider This, we asked our guests about the rationale behind the new MM2H rules. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news update on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I'm Fahana Sheh. We'll see you again.